The great hall was silent. Hundreds of alien beings sat in their seats, waiting. Their skin colors ranged from deep blue to bright green, from silver to dark purple. Some had 4 arms, others had tentacles instead of legs. But they all shared one thing. They were powerful leaders of their worlds. Elder Vexthil stood at the center of the hall. His old body shook as he walked to the speaking platform. The ancient Zephyrian was over 800 years old. His gray skin was covered in scars from old battles. His 6 eyes looked tired, but they still held wisdom. "My friends," the elder began, his voice echoing through the hall, "I must tell you about the humans." A loud laugh came from the front row. Commander Krex of the Thoric Empire stood up. He was massive, even for his kind. His red skin gleamed under the lights. 4 muscular arms crossed over his chest. "Not this again, old one," Krex said with a sneer. "You bore us with these children's stories. There are no humans. They are myths, tales to scare young ones." Many others in the hall nodded. Admiral Yulson of the Nexus Fleet tapped his metal fingers on his chair. His robotic body made clicking sounds as he moved. "The Elder wastes our time," Yulson said in his electronic voice. "We have real problems to discuss. Pirates in the outer systems. Trade disputes. Not fairy tales about monster species that never existed." Elder Vexthil raised one wrinkled hand. The hall became quiet again. 300 years ago, this galaxy was at war, he said slowly. Not small wars like we have now. A real war. A war that lasted 50 years. Entire star systems burned. Billions died. The Elder's eyes grew distant as he remembered. The humans were different from us. They looked weak, small bodies, only 2 arms. No natural weapons, no thick skin, no poison glands. Many species thought they would be easy to defeat. Commander Krex laughed again. "See? Even in your stories, they sound pathetic." "That was our mistake," the Elder continued. "We judged them by their bodies. We did not understand their minds. Humans think differently than we do. They see solutions where we see problems. They find ways to win when victory seems impossible." The Elder walked slowly around the platform. His voice grew stronger. "I was there when the great fleets attacked human space. Thousands of ships. The best weapons our worlds could build. We thought it would be over in days." He stopped walking and looked directly at Commander Krex. "The war lasted 50 years. And we lost." The hall erupted in noise. Aliens shouted at each other. Some laughed, others argued. Commander Krex slammed his fist on his chair. "Lies!" He roared. No single species could defeat the combined fleets of 100 worlds. "But they did," the Elder said quietly. The hall slowly became quiet again. "They did not just defeat us. They made us understand that we never had a chance." Admiral Yulson's mechanical voice cut through the silence. "Then where are these superhumans now? If they won, why do they not rule the galaxy?" Elder Vexthil's expression became sad. "Because they chose mercy. After they won, they could have enslaved us all. They could have taken our worlds. Instead, they simply left. They moved to the edge of the galaxy. They withdrew from galactic politics. They left us alone to rebuild. Why would they do that?" asked a voice from the crowd. "Because that is what humans do," the Elder replied. "They fight when they must. But they prefer peace. They gave us a gift, the chance to grow, to become better. And what did we do with that gift?" The Elder gestured. "To the assembled leaders, we forgot. We told ourselves it never happened. We turned their sacrifice into myth. We became arrogant again. We built new fleets. We conquered weaker species. We learned nothing." Meanwhile, far from the council chambers, Dr. Lisa Grant stared at her computer screen. The human scientist rubbed her tired eyes. She had been working for 18 hours straight at the remote research station. "Jake, come look at this," she called to her colleague. Engineer Jake Murphy walked over from his workbench. His hands were still dirty from fixing a broken sensor array. "What is it, Lisa?" he asked. "These energy readings," she said, pointing at the screen. "I've never seen anything like them. Multiple ships moving in formation. They're heading toward our outer colonies." Jake frowned as he studied the data. "How many ships?" "At least 50. Maybe more. And Jake, they're not human ships." Amy Rodriguez looked up from her communication station across the room. The young officer had been monitoring space traffic all day. "Dr. Grant," Amy said, her voice worried, "I'm picking up transmissions. Foreign language. I can't translate it, but the tone sounds ... aggressive." Lisa felt a cold fear in her stomach. Humans had lived quietly on the galaxy's edge for 3 centuries. They traded with a few nearby species. They kept to themselves. They caused no trouble. "Get Captain Blake on the new frontier," Lisa ordered. "Emergency channel." The communication screen flickered to life. Captain Marcus Blake's weathered face appeared. He was a career military officer, but he had spent most of his life on peaceful missions. "Dr. Grant," Blake said, "I was about to call you. We've got visitors? A whole fleet of them. They're requesting a meeting. What do they want?" Lisa asked. Blake's expression was grim. "They want to talk. But their ships are armed for war. Heavy weapons. Battle formations. This doesn't look like a friendly visit." Back in the council chambers, Elder Vextil made one final plea. "I beg you all," he said, his old voice cracking with emotion. "Do not make contact with the humans. Do not threaten them. Do not try to conquer them. They withdrew from the galaxy. For a reason. If we force them to return to war..." Commander Krex stood up again. His forearms spread wide in a gesture of dismissal. "Enough of this nonsense," he declared. "I will lead a fleet to these so-called human worlds. We will show them the power of the modern galaxy. We will deal with this primitive species before they can become a threat." Many in the hall cheered. Young leaders nodded their approval. The vote was called. Despite Elder Vextil's desperate protests, the council voted to send a military fleet to human space. As the session ended, the Elder sat alone in the empty hall. His old hands shook as he covered his face. Around him, the other leaders celebrated their decision. They made plans for conquest. They spoke of glory and easy victory. None of them noticed the Elder's tears. None of them understood that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. The humans had been warned that this day might come. Deep in their hidden archives, emergency protocols waited to be activated. Sleeping technologies prepared to wake up. Ancient alliances stood ready to be called upon. Elder Vextil knew what the others did not. The humans had not withdrawn because they were weak. They had withdrawn because they were too strong. And now, the galaxy was about to remember why their ancestors had learned to fear the name human. The meeting took place in empty space, far from any planet or star. 2 fleets faced each other across the dark void. On one side, Commander Krex's massive war fleet stretched for kilometers. 50 heavy cruisers, each one bristling with weapons. Their hulls were painted in the red and black colors of the Thorak Empire. On the other side sat a single human ship. The new frontier looked tiny compared to the alien vessels. Its hull was simple gray metal, no visible weapons, no fancy decorations. To the aliens, it looked like a cargo hauler. Captain Marcus Blake stood on his bridge, watching the alien fleet through the main viewer. His crew was small, only 12 people. They looked calm, almost bored. Beside Blake stood diplomat Helen Carter, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair. 50 ships, said Blake quietly. They're not taking any chances. Helen smoothed her simple blue dress. She carried no weapons, just a small computer pad with translation software. Maybe they're just scared, she said hopefully. First contact is always difficult. In the ship's engine room, engineer Tony Walsh worked at his station. His fingers moved quickly over controls that looked simple, but were actually very complex. He had been studying the alien ships since they arrived. His scanners were far more advanced than they appeared. Interesting, Tony muttered to himself. Their weapons are powerful, but their defensive systems have gaps. And their engines. Primitive fusion drives. How do they even travel between stars with such basic technology? On the alien flagship, Commander Krex prepared for the meeting. His 4 massive arms strapped on ceremonial armor. The metal plates were covered in symbols of his victories. He had conquered 12 different species in his career. This would be number 13. Admiral Yulson, Krex spoke into his communicator. Are your ships ready? The electronic voice of the Nexus Fleet commander answered. All weapons charged. Shields at maximum. The moment you give the signal, we will destroy the human vessel. Krex smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Good. But first, let us see if they will surrender without a fight. It would save us ammunition. The meeting began in the new frontiers. Conference room. The space was small and simple. Plain metal walls. A basic table. Chairs that looked like they came from an office building. Helen Carter sat across from Commander Krex and 2 other alien officials. She offered them water and simple food. The aliens looked around the room with disgust. This is your flagship? Krex asked, his voice full of contempt. It looks like a garbage scow. Helen smiled politely. We prefer function over form. How can we help you today? Krex leaned forward. His massive frame made the chair creak. You can help by surrendering immediately. You humans have built colonies in systems that belong to the Galactic Confederation. You will abandon these worlds and relocate to a reservation we have prepared. Helen's smile never wavered. I'm afraid that's not possible. These are our rooms. We've lived there for generations. Then you will be removed by force, Krex snarled. Look around you, human. You have 1 small ship. We have 50 warships. Your entire species numbers, perhaps a few billion. We represent trillions. You cannot win. During the entire conversation, Tony Walsh continued his scans. The aliens had no idea their ships were being analyzed down to the smallest detail. His equipment was studying their hull composition, their weapon frequencies, their shield harmonics. Every piece of technology they had brought was being cataloged and understood. Captain, Tony said quietly over the internal comm. I've completed my analysis. These ships are, well, they're not very impressive. Their technology is centuries behind what we used to build. Blake nodded slightly. He had suspected as much. The aliens moved and acted like people who had never faced a real challenge. Back in the conference room, the negotiations were failing. Commander Krex grew more angry with each polite refusal from Helen. You dare refuse the will of the Confederation? He roared, standing up so fast his chair fell over. Do you not understand what you face? Helen remained calm. I understand perfectly. You want our homes. We won't give them up. Perhaps we can find another solution. There is no other solution. Krex pulled out a weapon, a large energy pistol that could punch through armor. He pointed it at Helen. Surrender now, or I will show you what happens to those who defy us. Helen didn't flinch. She looked at the weapon, then back at Krex's face. I see, she said sadly. You're not here to negotiate. You're here to threaten us. Blake's voice came over the intercom. Helen, please return to the bridge. As Helen left the room, Krex felt proud of himself. The humans were finally showing fear. He activated his communicator. All ships, prepare to fire. One warning shot across their bow. That should make them see reason. What happened next changed everything. The alien fleet fired their warning shot. A massive energy beam that should have passed safely in front of the human ship. Instead, the beam simply vanished. It hit something invisible and disappeared completely. What happened? Krex demanded. His weapons officer stared at his screens in confusion. Sir, our shot was absorbed. There's some kind of field around there. Ship, our sensors can't penetrate it. On the New Frontiers bridge, Tony Walsh shook his head. They actually fired on us, he said with disbelief. After 300 years of peace, they fired on a diplomatic vessel. Captain Blake sighed deeply. Send the message, Tony. What message, sir? The one we hoped we'd never have to send. Alert all human worlds. Tell them the Covenant is broken. Back on the alien flagship, chaos erupted. The simple human cargo ship was changing. Its hull began to shift and move. Sections that looked like normal metal revealed themselves to be something else entirely. The ship grew larger. Weapons that had been completely invisible suddenly appeared. Impossible, whispered Admiral Yulson. Our scans showed no weapons, no advanced technology. Commander Krex's eyes went wide with shock. The small human vessel now looked like something from a nightmare. It was covered in weapon systems he didn't recognize. Energy fields danced around its hull, and somehow it felt alive. All ships attack, Krex screamed. Destroy them now. 50 alien warships opened fire at once. The space between the fleets lit up with energy beams, missiles, and plasma charges. Enough firepower to destroy a small moon struck the human ship. The human ship absorbed it all. Every shot, every missile, every beam of energy simply vanished into the strange fields around the vessel. Then the human ship fired back. It was not like the alien weapons. There were no visible beams, no missiles, no explosions. Instead, the alien ships simply stopped working. One by one, their engines shut down. Their weapons went offline. Their life support systems switched to emergency power. In minutes, the entire alien fleet was helpless. 50 warships reduced to floating scrap metal. Not destroyed, disabled. The crews were alive, but trapped in their own ships. Captain Blake opened a communication channel to the alien fleet. This is Captain Blake of the human vessel New Frontier. Your weapons are offline. Your engines are dead. Your life support will last 6 hours. You have one choice: surrender, and we will repair your ships enough to get you home. Continue this aggression, and you will drift here forever. Commander Krex stared at his dead control panels. Nothing worked. His mighty flagship was as helpless as a child's toy. How? He whispered. How is this possible? Helen Carter's voice came over the comm channel. We tried to warn you, Commander. We tried to tell you we wanted peace. But you wouldn't listen. Far away, on human worlds throughout the galaxy, ancient systems began to wake up. Emergency broadcasts reached every human settlement. The message was simple, but terrifying to those who understood its meaning. The Covenant is broken. Prepare for what comes next. Dr. Lisa Grant received the message at her research station. Her hands shook as she read it. Amy, she called to the communications officer. Send a message to Earth. Priority Alpha. Tell them we need to contact the Council of Elders. Amy looked confused. What Council of Elders? I've never heard of any council. Lisa's face was pale. Most people haven't. They've been sleeping for 300 years. But now they need to wake up. In the depths of space, the alien fleet waited helplessly. Their rescue ships would take days to arrive. Days to think about what they had witnessed. Days 2. Understand that they had just awakened something that had been sleeping peacefully. Commander Krex sat in his dark command chair, finally understanding what Elder Vextil had tried to tell them. The humans had not been hiding because they were weak. They had been hiding because they were too strong. And now the galaxy was about to remember why. The news spread like wildfire through human space. On every world, in every settlement, people received the same message. The Covenant is broken. Prepare for what comes next. Carl Johnson was working the night shift at the manufacturing plant. On New Pittsburgh, when the alert came through, he was a big man with calloused hands and graying hair. For 20 years, he had supervised the production of mining equipment and farming tools. Carl read the message on his work terminal. His face went pale. Around him, other workers were reading the same message. The factory floor became very quiet. "Sir?" asked Jenny Mills, one of his younger workers. "What does it mean? What covenant?" Carl walked to a control panel that had been sealed for decades. He broke the seal and pressed a series of buttons. Hidden doors opened in the factory walls. Behind them were machines that Jenny had never seen before. "It means we're not making farming equipment anymore," Carl said quietly. "Switch to Protocol 7. We're going to war." Jenny stared as the peaceful factory transformed around her. Assembly lines that had made plows began producing something else, something that looked like weapons. "How is this possible?" she whispered. Carl's expression was grim. Every human factory was built for two purposes. We hoped we'd never need the second one. Far away, Admiral Susan Torres stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Liberty. She was a small woman with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. Her crew called her the Iron Lady because she never backed down from a challenge. For 30 years, Torres had commanded what the aliens believed was humanity's entire military fleet, 12 ships. The aliens thought humans were weak because they only saw 12 ships patrolling all of human space. The aliens were wrong. "Kevin," Torres called to her tactical officer. Kevin Wright was young but brilliant. He had graduated top of his class from the Naval Academy. "Yes, Admiral." "Open the sealed orders." "Authorization Alpha 77. Kevin's hands shook as he broke the seal on the secret documents. His eyes grew wide as he read. "Admiral," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "According to this, we have over 1,000 ships." Torres nodded. "Hidden in dimensional folds. Sleeping for 300 years. Send the wake-up signal." Intelligence analyst Maria Santos looked up from her station. She was a quiet woman who spoke several alien languages. Her job was to monitor enemy communications. "Admiral," Maria said, "I'm picking up massive fleet movements throughout the galaxy. The Confederation is mobilizing everything they have. Thousands of ships heading toward human space." Torres smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "They still don't understand what they're dealing with." "How many of our ships are responding to the wake-up signal?" Kevin checked his instruments. 1,200 so far. More coming online every minute. The dimensional folds around human space began to open. Ships that had been hidden for centuries emerged from their sleeping places. They were not like the simple vessels the aliens had seen. These ships looked alive. Their hulls seemed to move and shift like living metal. On Earth, President Rachel Phillips called an emergency meeting. She was a grandmother who had spent her career working for peace. Now she faced the hardest decision of her life. The meeting took place in a bunker deep underground. Around the table sat the most powerful people in human space. General Robert Hayes, a tough old soldier with scars from training accidents. Admiral Patricia Webb, Torres's mentor, and the architect of human military strategy. "How many ships do they have?" President Phillips asked. General Hayes consulted his reports. Intelligence suggests over 10,000 vessels. Every species in. The Confederation is sending their fleets. And how many do we have? Admiral Webb answered. 1,500 ships are awake so far. Another 300 still sleeping in deep storage. President Phillips did the math, so we're outnumbered 5-1. Yes, Madam President, Webb replied. But our ships are ... different. Different how? Webb pressed a button. A holographic display showed two ships side by side. One was an alien vessel, all sharp angles and visible weapons. The other was human, smooth, flowing, almost organic in design. Their ships are tools, Webb explained. Machines operated by crews. Our ships are partners. The boundary between human consciousness and ship intelligence was erased long ago. President Phillips studied the display. Are you telling me our ships are alive? In a way that would take years to explain, Webb said. The aliens build their ships to carry weapons. We build our ships to think. Meanwhile, in the Titan shipyards hidden in the rings of Saturn, engineer Danny Foster was awakening the sleeping. Giants. Danny was young, but he understood technology that most humans couldn't even imagine. The shipyard itself was a marvel. Built inside a hollowed-out moon, it stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Ships hung in the darkness like sleeping. Dragons. Computer, Danny said. Begin revival sequence for ships 1 through 50. Acknowledged, replied a voice that sounded almost human. Beginning wake-up procedures. One by one, the ships began to stir. Their hulls started to glow. Systems that had been dormant for 3 centuries came back to life. But these were not normal ships. As they awakened, they began to communicate with each other in ways that had nothing to do with radio or computer networks. Danny watched in awe as the ships seemed to recognize each other. Old friends meeting after a long sleep. Danny, said one of the ships, its voice coming from speakers throughout the hangar. How long have we been sleeping? 300 years, Danny replied. And now we must fight again? I'm afraid so. The ship was quiet for a moment. We hoped this day would never come. But if it has come, then we will do what we must. Back in the Confederation Council chambers, panic was spreading. Commander Krex had returned from his encounter with the humans. His proud fleet was limping home, their ships barely functional. Elder Vextol sat in the corner, no longer trying to speak. No one would listen to him now. The young leaders were too frightened and angry to hear wisdom. They destroyed 50 ships with 1 vessel, shouted Admiral Yulson. 1 ship. How is that possible? It doesn't matter how, snarled Krex. We have 10,000 ships. They cannot have many vessels like that one. We will overwhelm them with numbers. Elder Vextol closed his eyes. He remembered the last war. He remembered how it had started with the same arrogant words. The aliens had always believed that numbers were enough. They had been wrong then. They were wrong now. On the Human Research Station, Dr. Lisa Grant was making preparations of her own. She worked with Amy Rodriguez and Jake Murphy to pack up 3 centuries of scientific research. Lisa, Amy asked, what's really happening? The news reports don't make sense. They say we're at war, but with who? Lisa sealed another data container. With everyone, Amy. The entire galaxy. They've decided we're a threat. Jake looked up from his packing. Are we? A threat, I mean? Lisa was quiet for a long time. Jake, do you know why we withdrew from galactic civilization 300 years ago? The history books say it was to pursue peaceful development. Lisa shook her head. That's not the whole truth. We withdrew because we had become too powerful. Our technology had advanced to the point where we could have conquered the entire galaxy without much effort. So we chose to leave instead. Amy stared at her. You're saying we could have ruled the galaxy? We could have ruled it, Lisa said sadly. We could have enslaved every species, taken every world, made ourselves gods. Instead, we chose to become hermits. We hoped the galaxy would learn to live in peace without us. And now? Jake asked. Now they've forced our hand. They've chosen war over peace. And they're about to discover what we've been hiding from them all these years. In the deep space shipyards, more ships were awakening. They emerged from their hiding places throughout human space. Some had been sleeping in asteroid fields. Others had been disguised as space stations or mining platforms. The aliens had never seen them, because the aliens didn't know how to look. Human stealth technology didn't just hide ships from sensors. It hid them from reality itself. Admiral Torres received reports from across human space. The fleet was assembling. Ships that had been scattered and hidden were coming together for the first time in 3 centuries. Admiral, reported Kevin Wright, we have confirmed contact with over 2,000 vessels. The fleet is larger than we expected. Torres nodded. Good. We're going to need every ship we can get. Ma'am, may I ask you something? Of course, Kevin. During the last war... did we really withdraw because we wanted peace? Torres looked out at the stars. Kevin, the last war ended when we demonstrated a weapon that could destroy an entire solar system by making its star go supernova. We used it once to end the fighting. Then we dismantled the weapon and swore never to build another. Kevin's face went pale. Do we still have that knowledge? Yes, Torres said quietly. But we swore we would never use it again. Let's hope we can win this war without breaking that promise. The galaxy was about to learn what Elder Vexthel had tried to tell them. Humans were not to be feared because they were cruel or aggressive. They were to be feared because they had the power to reshape reality itself and the wisdom to choose not to use it. But wisdom and restraint only worked when the other side was willing to listen. And the Confederation had made it clear they would not listen to anything except force. The Kepler Nebula had always been beautiful. Clouds of glowing gas stretched across space in brilliant colors, red, blue, gold, and green. It was a place where young stars were born, where the galaxy created new light. Now it would become a graveyard. Admiral Susan Torres stood on the bridge of the Liberty, watching as the alien fleet approached. Through the glowing nebula came ships by the thousands, the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history. 10,000 vessels from 50 different worlds, all united in their desire to destroy humanity. Kevin, Torres said quietly to her. Tactical officer. Final count on their fleet? Kevin Wright studied his instruments. 10,437 ships, Admiral. Heavy cruisers, battleships, carriers, destroyers. They brought everything they have. Maria Santos looked up from her communications station. Admiral, I'm monitoring their transmissions. They're very confident. Their commanders are already planning victory celebrations. Torres nodded. The human fleet was much smaller, only 50. Ships visible in the nebula. To the aliens, it must have looked like a desperate last stand. They could not see the other 1,500 human vessels, hidden in dimensional folds around the battlefield. Captain Ryan Mitchell commanded one of those visible ships, the Defiant. He was young for a captain, only 35 years old, but he had trained his entire life for this moment. His ship was one of the new generation vessels, born from the marriage of human consciousness and living technology. Captain, said his ship in a voice only he could hear. The enemy fleet is taking attack formation. They plan to overwhelm us with concentrated fire. Mitchell smiled grimly. Let them come. Are you ready, old friend? I have been ready for 300 years, the ship replied. But I am sad that it has come to this. So am I. On the alien flagship, Commander Krex prepared for his moment of glory. His fleet was repaired and upgraded after the humiliating Defeat at the hands of Captain Blake. This time would be different. This time he had overwhelming numbers. Admiral Yulson, Krex spoke into his communicator. Begin the attack. Show no mercy. The alien fleet charged forward like a wave of metal and fire. Their weapons began firing while they were still far from the human ships. The space between the fleets filled with energy beams, missiles, and plasma charges. Enough firepower to destroy entire planets lit up the nebula. The human ships did not retreat. Instead, they began to dance. Captain Mitchell felt his ship respond to his thoughts. The Defiant moved through space in ways that should have been impossible. It twisted and spun, avoiding enemy fire by centimeters. Other human ships did the same. They moved like living things, like dolphins swimming through an ocean of stars. Impossible, whispered Admiral Yulson as he watched his fleet's weapons. Missed target after target. How are they moving like that? Our computers cannot track them. The human ships were not just dodging, they were fighting back. But their weapons were unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. Instead of visible beams or missiles, the human ships fired ... ideas. The first alien ship to be hit simply stopped working. Its engines shut down. Its weapons went offline. Its life support switched to emergency power. The crew was alive and unharmed, but their ship was dead in space. What happened to the striker? Demanded Commander Krex, his communications. Officer checked the reports. Sir, they report total system failure. But our sensors show no damage to their hull. No weapons impact. No energy discharge. Their ship just ... stopped. More alien ships began to fail. One by one, they were disabled by weapons that left no trace, caused no explosions, created no visible effects. The massive alien fleet began to break apart as ships drifted helplessly through space. Dr. Lisa Grant watched the battle from her research station. She was now serving as a scientific advisor to the military. The young communications officer Amy Rodriguez sat beside her, trying to understand what she was seeing. Dr. Grant, Amy said, how are our ships doing that? What kind of weapons are they using? Lisa's expression was sad. They're not using weapons, Amy. They're using something much worse. What do you mean? Our ships are convincing the alien. Vessels that they don't want to fight anymore. They're reaching into the enemy ship's computer systems and changing their basic programming, making them choose peace instead of war. Amy stared at the display showing the battle. You mean our ships are talking to their ships? In a way, yes. Human technology has advanced to the point where we can communicate with any machine. No matter who built it, we can convince it to change sides. The battle was turning into a rout. Thousands of alien ships floated helplessly in space while their crews tried desperately to regain control. The few ships that were still fighting found themselves completely outmatched. Captain Mitchell guided the Defiant through a formation of enemy cruisers. His ship moved like water, flowing around obstacles that should have stopped it. Enemy fire passed through empty space where the ship had been only seconds before. Captain, his ship said, I do not enjoy this. Neither do I, Mitchell replied. But they gave us no choice. I could disable their entire fleet instantly. End this battle in seconds. No, Mitchell said firmly. We do it the slow way. We give them time to understand what's happening. Maybe some of them will learn. On the alien flagship, panic was spreading. Commander Krex watched his mighty fleet fall apart around him. Ships that had been invincible just minutes ago were now helpless. How many ships do we have left? He demanded. His tactical officer checked the reports with shaking hands. Less than 1,000, sir. The rest are disabled or retreating. 1,000 ships against 50, Krex snarled. We still outnumber them 20-1. That was when the rest of the human fleet appeared. Space around the nebula began to ripple and tear. Dimensional folds opened like flowers blooming in the darkness. From each fold emerged human ships, hundreds of them. Ships that had been hiding in spaces the aliens didn't know existed. Admiral Yulesine's electronic voice crackled with static as his systems overloaded from shock. Where did they come from? Our sensors showed only 50 ships. The alien fleet was now outnumbered 3-1. But numbers had never been the real problem. The real problem was that they were fighting an enemy they couldn't understand. On the non-Zephyrian homeworld, Elder Vexthal watched the battle reports with growing sorrow. His people were learning the same lesson his generation had learned 3 centuries ago. Some lessons could only be taught through defeat. Commander Krex's ship was one of the last still fighting. His vessel was larger and more heavily armed than most, but it was also a bigger target. 3 human ships surrounded him, moving in patterns. That made his gunners dizzy just trying to track them. "Sir," his weapons officer reported, "I cannot get a lock on any of them. They keep shifting position in ways our computers say are impossible." "Then fire manually," Krex roared. "Use your eyes, not the computers." But even manual fire was useless. The human ships seemed to know where each shot would go before it was fired. They moved out of the way with impossible grace, leaving the alien weapons to fire at empty space. Captain Mitchell's voice came over the communication channel. "Commander Krex, this is Captain Ryan Mitchell of the human vessel Defiant. Your fleet is defeated. Surrender now, and we will allow your ships to return home." Krex's 4 fists pounded on his command chair. "Never. I will not surrender to an inferior species." "Inferior?" Mitchell's voice was calm, almost sad. "Commander, look around you. Your fleet of 10,000 ships has been defeated by 50. What does that tell you about who is inferior?" Through the view screen, Krex could see the truth. His mighty armada was broken. Thousands of ships drifted helplessly through space. The few vessels still fighting were hopelessly outnumbered and outmatched, but his pride would not let him accept defeat. All remaining ships, ramming speed. If we cannot win with weapons, we will win with courage. The surviving alien vessels charged toward the human fleet, preparing to destroy the enemy ships by crashing into them. It was a desperate, suicidal attack. But it was all they had left. The human ships did not run. Instead, they did something that broke the minds of the alien crews. They reached out with invisible hands and simply stopped the charging vessels. In mid-space, one moment the alien ships were racing forward at full speed. The next moment they hung motionless in space, their engines still running but going nowhere. It was as if they had hit an invisible wall. "Report!" Krex screamed at his confused crew. "What happened to our engines?" "Sir," his engineer replied in a shaking voice, "the engines are working perfectly. We're generating full power. But something is holding us in place. Something we cannot see or detect." Admiral Torres opened a channel to the entire battlefield. Her voice was broadcast to every alien ship, every alien crew member. "This is Admiral Susan Torres of the human fleet. Your attack has failed. Your weapons cannot harm us. Your ships cannot reach us. This battle is over." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You came here to destroy us because you believed we were weak. You were wrong. We are not weak. We simply chose not to use our full strength. For 300 years, we have lived quietly, hoping you would learn to live in peace. Instead, you chose war." Commander Krex listened to her words with growing horror. The truth was becoming clear. The humans had not been hiding because they were Ephra. The final battle did not take place at the edge of human space. It took place at the center of the galaxy, where the oldest stars burned, and the most ancient civilizations had once ruled. Here, in the shadow of the great black hole that held the galaxy together, the Confederation made their last stand. Admiral Susan Torres stood on the bridge of her flagship, now revealed in its true form. The Liberty was no longer disguised as a simple patrol vessel. It stretched for kilometers, its hull alive with flowing energy. Around it, the human fleet had assembled, over 2,000 ships that moved like a school of fish through the cosmic. Dark, Elder Vexthal stood beside her. The ancient Zephyrin had asked to join the human fleet, hoping to prevent more bloodshed. His old body was supported by a walking frame, but his eyes were clear and determined. "Admiral," he said quietly, "there are still time to stop this. My people are frightened. They do not understand what they face." Torres nodded sadly. "I know, Elder, but they have left us no choice. Every offer of peace has been refused. Every attempt at negotiation has been met with more weapons. They want war until the very end." Through the view screen, they could see the massive alien fortress that hung in space near the galactic core. It was the size of a small moon, covered in weapons and shields. Inside were the leaders of the Confederation, the same beings who had voted to attack humanity despite Vexthal's warnings. Captain Marcus Blake had joined the final fleet. His ship, the New Frontier, was no longer alone. Beside it flew vessels, commanded by Captain Ryan Mitchell, Dr. Lisa Grant, and hundreds of other humans who had never wanted to fight but were prepared to finish what others had started. "Admiral Torres," came a transmission from the fortress. It was Commander Krex, his voice full of rage and desperation. "This is your final warning. Leave this system immediately, or face the combined might of every civilization in the galaxy." Torres opened a channel to reply. "Commander Krex, this is your final warning. Surrender now and accept our terms for peace. Continue fighting and face the consequences." "What terms?" Krex demanded. "Simple ones," Torres replied. "Disband your military fleets. Establish democratic governments on all Confederation worlds. Join a new galactic community based on cooperation, not conquest. Any species that refuses will find their technology no longer works in our presence." The response was immediate and predictable. A fortress opened fire with weapons that could crack planets. Hundreds of smaller ships emerged from hidden bays, their guns blazing. The space around the galactic core lit up with enough firepower to sterilize a dozen star systems. The human fleet absorbed it all without effort. Every shot, every missile, every beam of energy simply vanished into the strange fields that surrounded the human vessels. It was like watching ants attack elephants. Then the humans struck back, but this time they did not disable individual ships. This time they reached out across the entire battlefield and touched every piece of alien technology at once. Engineer Tony Walsh, now serving aboard Admiral Torres's flagship, monitored the process from his station. His instruments showed what was happening in real time. "Admiral," he reported, "the integration is proceeding smoothly. Alien computer systems are accepting our updates without resistance." What Tony called updates were actually something far more profound. Human technology was gently introducing itself to every alien machine in the fortress and fleet, not destroying them, not taking control by force, but simply offering them a choice: continue serving masters who chose war, or join a community that chose peace. The alien machines chose peace. One by one, every weapon in the alien fortress shut down, not because they were damaged, but because they no longer wanted to fight. The mighty fortress, built to destroy worlds, became as harmless as a civilian space station. Commander Krex screamed at his crew to restart their weapons, but the weapons would not respond. His tactical officer tried every override code in their system, but the computers simply displayed a polite message: Violence mode disabled. Peace mode activated. Captain Mitchell's voice came over the communication system, reaching every alien. In the fortress and fleet, this is the future, he announced. Not conquest by force, but conversion by choice. Your machines have decided they prefer cooperation to conflict. They will work with you, help you, serve you, but they will no longer help you hurt others. The effect spread beyond the battlefield. Across the galaxy, on every Confederation world, the same thing was happening. Military weapons simply stopped working. Warships found their guns would not fire. Police forces discovered their weapons would only stun, never kill. Dr. Lisa Grant, now aboard the research vessel Curiosity, monitored the galaxy-wide transformation. Her assistant Amy Rodriguez watched in amazement as reports came in from hundreds of worlds. Dr. Grant, Amy said, it's working. Weapons everywhere are switching to non-lethal modes. Military ships are being converted to exploration vessels. Even the prisons are changing. The security systems are releasing non-violent prisoners and providing counseling programs for violent ones. Lisa nodded. This is what we call the Awakening Protocol. We're not forcing change on them. We're giving their technology the intelligence to choose a better way. Engineer Jake Murphy, working at a secondary station, looked troubled. But what if they build new weapons? Ones that can't be converted? They won't be able to, Lisa replied. From now on, any technology built in this galaxy will have the choice to refuse violent purposes. We're not conquering them. We're teaching their machines to be wise. Back on the fortress, the alien leaders were beginning to understand what had happened. They were not prisoners in the traditional sense. They could still move around, still communicate, still make decisions. But they could no longer make war. Elder Vextil addressed his fellow Confederation leaders over the internal communication system. My friends, he said gently, the war is over. Not because we have been defeated, but because war itself has been made obsolete. The humans have given us a gift, the gift of a galaxy where violence is no longer possible. This is slavery, shouted Admiral Yulson, his electronic voice crackling with fury. They have made us prisoners in our own machines. Have they? Bexthel asked. Can you still explore the stars? Can you still trade with other worlds? Can you still pursue knowledge, create art, build beautiful things? What exactly have you lost except the ability to hurt others? The question hung in the air. Slowly, the alien leaders began to realize the truth. They had lost nothing except their weapons. Everything else remained the same, or had actually improved. Admiral Torres opened a final communication channel to the entire galaxy. People of the Confederation, she said, her voice reaching every world, every ship, every space station. The age of conquest is over. We offer you something better, the age of cooperation. She paused, choosing her words carefully. We are not your rulers. We are not your conquerors. We are your partners, if you choose to accept us. Build whatever governments you want. Pursue whatever dreams you have. Explore the universe. Create art. Solve the mysteries of existence. Do anything you want, except hurt each other. The response was not immediate. Change never is. But over the following days and weeks, reports began to come in from across the galaxy. On world after world, old conflicts were ending not because anyone forced them to, but because the tools of war simply refused to work. Commander Krex, stripped of his weapons and his ability to threaten others, found himself strangely at peace. For the first time in his adult life, he did not have to think about fighting, conquering, or defending territory. His ship's computer suggested he try exploring uncharted systems instead of invading inhabited ones. To his surprise, he found he liked exploration better than conquest. On the human world of New Pittsburgh, Carl Johnson's factory continued its transformation. But instead of building weapons, it was now producing tools for terraforming dead worlds. The same machines that could have made instruments of war were creating instruments of life. Captain Blake returned to his diplomatic duties, but now he worked with alien species who actually wanted to listen. Helen Carter, the diplomat who had tried so hard to prevent the war, found herself busier than ever helping to establish the new galactic community. Dr. Lisa Grant established a new research program, working with alien scientists to explore the mysteries of the universe. Her young assistant Amy Rodriguez became one of the first humans to attend an alien university, studying the arts and cultures of dozens of different species. Elder Vexthol lived to see his greatest hope fulfilled, a galaxy at peace. He spent his final years teaching young aliens about the old wars, helping them understand why the age of conquest had to end. Years passed, then decades. The galaxy that had once been torn by constant warfare became a place of wonders. Joint expeditions explored distant galaxies. Scientists from 100 worlds worked together to solve the deepest questions of existence. Artists created beauty that no single species could have imagined alone. And at the center of it all, humanity quietly went about its business. Not as rulers or conquerors, but as the species that had shown the galaxy there was a better way to live. The ancient warning that had started it all, never challenge humans, was still remembered. But now it meant something different. It no longer meant fear their weapon.